K0JSC, let me do a quick audio test to make sure levels are okay. And I think they were low. We'll try that again. One more time with audio level to YouTube, and then there's a little delay here, so I think we're in the ballpark though. Alright, that was actually a little worse, but waiting. There, we're better. Alright, let me do a few check-ins here and we'll get started. K0JSC. Alright, might be a bit of a slow night to check in for the Area 3, 4, and 5 digital net. Please call now. W2IMZ, Chody, Canyon City.
K0JSC
W1CAT, Brian and Howard.
N0OBB, NRS. K0MOQ, Chris, Bubba West.
This is W0JSC.
KC2VJW. K0PSG.
Alright, let me pause and acknowledge who I have. Got W2IMZ, K0GMS, W1CAT, N0OBB, K0MOQ, W0OJW, KC2VJW, and KE0... I know I just talked to you, Chase. Is it Papa Sierra Golf PSG or Papa Fox Golf? I didn't quite hear it.
Papa Sierra Golf.
Alright, not bad, because I usually can't typically hear well, so it's me, not anybody else. But anyway, one more time for check-ins and we'll get started with some stuff here. feed of my desktop to YouTube. I think you guys know how to get there. If you don't, go to youtube.com in the search bar. Just type my call sign K0JSC and you should see one that has a little red box on it that says 5 or something like that. That'll be what we're working with tonight. And a little background from last week's net. Chris had suggested some sort of a message board type thing that we could use IM prop and set whiteboard between nets, but that's kind of what I think the intent was, to use as a sort of a whiteboard to bounce ideas or have discussion between nets. And I resurrected a server that I had been running. We had been testing this for something else, and there's sort of a chat program on. There's sort of a chat program on there, and I thought that this might work. I think I sent most of you guys the link, and I've got all the stuff turned off, so you have to register via the quote secret URL, and then I have to authorize the account, so we don't get folks from other countries, spammers and such, that are clogging us up with registrations that shouldn't be here. So if you need the link, shoot me an email, K0JSC@ARRL.net, and it'll probably work. So K0JSC.Jeff@gmail.com, and most of you guys have my address. If you don't, shoot me an email and I'll get you the link so you can register. Alright, so it's just kind of a chat program, and I actually popped all the check-ins in here as we were going along too. Stand by. So going back to some of the things that we talked about last week, this was one of them, some sort of a chat message board kind of thing, and I've not had good luck with Mailman, which was the email list that we were using before, and it's been hit and miss, and it seems like it's more trouble than it's worth, so I decided to try this. So sending emails to the whole group, I'm going to have to come up with something else. There's a couple of other services out there that may do a little bit better, so look into that. We talked about this. We talked about Ben had brought up maybe doing some sort of a network presentation, which I think is a great idea, and we need to kind of work that out and try to do that on the net. That would be like a point-to-point and or mesh type network presentation. So we'll see if we can get that rolling. Neil and Brad mentioned FT8, which is kind of a newer digital mode that's being used on all bands, but specifically, I guess, people have had some great success with FT8 on 2 meters, so that might be something for us to try for those who are equipped. You need a sound card between your thing between your PC and your radio to be able to do that. We spoke a little bit about some of those you can kind of home through, and they aren't perfect, but they do work. So if there's interest in that, we should probably try to get everybody squared away on what the bare minimum is to make something like that work. And brass tacks is as simple as just plugging your radio into your PC, your input, audio in and audio out on your PC. Timer on this is short enough to remind me to stop talking. Audio input and audio output on your sound card on your PC. You can do it like that. Sometimes you'll have a ground loop issue and you need a isolation transformer to kind of deal with that, but it can work set up just that simple. K0JSC. I think the last thing we mentioned was maybe BP and just using it over the internet. There's a Windows program, it's free. You can download it, run it on a PC, and put that up here. There it is right there. Back up and yeah, so actually Windows, Linux, they don't have one for Mac. And it's pretty simple. We won't really get into this very heavily tonight until I guess we figure if there's sufficient interest, we'll give it our shot. But this is really it, and then you configure the ports. If you had a TNC connected to your radio, you could define a port in here as a serial port on your computer, which would be talking to the TNC, and you'd have that. And then there's the IP, the AXIP, or AXIP part of it that could go out over a local network or the internet. And I think for our purposes, we'd probably figure out a secure way to do it over the internet and have everyone connect to maybe a single point. And that way we can do all of the functions of Packet. It'd be just like doing Packet, except it would definitely be faster because it's going over the internet. And folks wouldn't have to invest in a TNC if they didn't want to. And because of the great distance between a lot of us, it would probably be more feasible than trying to do it on VHF. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me pause for questions, comments, or maybe additional check-ins. Call now. K0JSC. Okay, I heard a chunk coming from, looks like Bristol, but I don't know if somebody had a comment or what. Try it again.
WR, I'm just listening tonight, Jeff. I'm trying out a new accessory with my radio.
Okay, Ron. Sounds good, and glad to hear you. Thanks for letting us know you're listening, and we'll put you on the spot. Well, I do have you on the list. K0JSC. Okay, looks like there's a few guys signed into the chat here. Jody said he had BPQ installed. Probably the hardest thing, and Willem's got a big week coming up, so he couldn't be here. Probably the hardest thing is just getting the thing configured, whether it's with a TNC or over the internet or whatever, and I'll open up a sample configuration file and just kind of show you what it looks like, and you'll probably understand what I'm talking about when I say that it's goofy. So you open it with Notepad here, and let me reset and we'll go through the bits of this. And I am no expert, by the way. I'm not even going to act like one. And this, you see in the first part of it, this will supposedly support APRS as well. I've tried it with APRS. I don't really like the way that it works. It seems to work as a decent iGate, if I remember correctly. I could never get it to behave as a digipeater. And that was some of my, or both of my APRS nodes are both an iGate and a digipeater, and I wanted to do both, and I couldn't figure it out, but that doesn't mean that it was just something that I couldn't figure out. So it's a text-based configuration file that tells this software what to do. Everything, scroll down. He's got some decent comments in here. and having the example help. Trying to get to it. And if there's anybody on the net that is actually more familiar with BPQ than I am, feel free to bail me out. You're always welcome. So here you get down to the port definitions, and this would be where you would define them. Let's see if there's a serial one here. It doesn't look like it. I'm scrolling fast. So actually, there is a serial one there. Start up at the AXIP. So this would be the one that would be actually over the internet. Did I get to this? That must be the first one. So the port number, and then here's the ID. And all that does is when you ask the node if somebody remote or even local asks what ports the node has, this is what it would show people. AX/IP/UDP. It just means that it's a packet over an IP network connection, whether it be the internet or some other network. Then you specify the driver, and each one of them has a different driver. You tell a lot of these other numbers are timing and things about quality, and I've not ever delved into any of that. It just seems to be okay the way that I've left it, but as we learn more about it, we could probably tweak those, but I've never had to. And then here's the UDP port that it listens on. So if I wanted you guys all to connect to me, I'd have to go to my router and forward UDP port 10,093 to the machine that this is running on, and then you should all be able to go to my public IP address and connect to the node. K0JSC. Once you have a connection or a connectivity to the internet or to some network, again, not just the internet, you can actually map these nodes together. So you're telling this node where, say, W2IMZ or AC0KQ, you're telling them the IP address and the port where it is, and once it can talk to all those nodes, if somebody connects to one of them, they can see what that node hears, and you know how to. There's connectivity between all of them. You actually have to, if it's on a network, you actually have to specify that here. And then they can all talk to each other, and so you connect to one, and then you can see everything out on the rest of the network, essentially, with these lines right here where you map the node to another node. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, I'll pause for any questions, comments, or anything like that, and if this sounds like something you guys would want to try, definitely let me know. It doesn't cost a dime. Just download the software and excuse me, we'll muddle through the configuration, and that's all there is to it. You can make it work over the internet. So I'll pause. Toggling back to the chat window here. Actually, I could probably move the other side. Makes more sense. Port number 2 is actually async. Is a serial port. And the protocol is KISS, which is what we use a lot of times for APRS packets, things like that. We've talked about KISS versus some other protocols previously, so I won't get into it right now. Looks like based on the frequency, they've got this port set up connected to to a TNC and a VHF radio, and this is what they're using to do APRS. You got the speed of your serial port right here, and like I said, some of these other things that I haven't delved into what all they do, and I do not claim to be an expert. I know that this stuff works, and it works quite well. And then you specify your call sign for the beacons and things like that down here. Port number 3 is a little bit more confusing. There's a piece of free software out there called AGWPE or AGW Packet Engine. And it's sort of a virtual TNC. You can download that and play around with it. I've used it for some things, and I don't know that I've ever really needed it for any specific application. It is required to run a lot of AGW stuff, like AGW has an APRS tracker digipeating program, and if I remember correctly, you have to actually run AGWPE as a bridge between your TNC and their piece of software. I think it's required, otherwise it won't talk to a TNC. But this looks like, based on the frequency and everything else, this is their packet, their ports that they're using for packets. It's 147.525, and but they're using AGWPE as a bridge between the TNC and the software. And your eyes may be glazing over if you're watching this text scroll by. You generally have to just muddle through setting this up and getting it running. You really don't have to touch it again. It's pretty much that simple. Apparently I can't talk at the same time. But that's it. You don't have to go into the text file and change this and change that to do something different. Once you get it set up the way you want it, it just pretty much runs. It also, I think that one has a built-in web server to where, and there's, I mentioned the mapping, the map nodes before. Here's one of the nodes that my node is mapped to, K0NTS, which is the node that Willem runs up by every. There's a map between me and him in that config file so that we know we are aware of each other. Unit nodes, and it'll list some of the nodes that it's hurt, even though there's some gibberish, and Willem can explain in a later net what this is, but it's some kind of a goofy coding issue, I think. You read that. And we're looking at obviously we're looking at the web interface of this node. If you connect to it over packet or over a terminal program and you issue these commands, you still see the same thing. It's just purely in text and it's not as graphical. Async is the VHF radio over a TNC, and the telnet server is basically for configuration and some diagnostic things. We don't really use that. I don't know why it's always listed in a port. Do connect to WinLink over Telnet, so maybe that's why it's there. And then AXIP is the network component. So on port 3 of my node, that's the network, and that's how it goes out and talks to K0NTS. You can see the active links, and if there are any active sessions, you can see that, and yada, 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 that you can actually get to HTML-based terminal as well. spoke about in some previous nets, this particular instance of BBQ is actually running on a BeagleBone little microcomputer with a TNCX TNC attached to it. You can actually run this on a Raspberry Pi. You have to just use the Linux version. So again, let me pause. Any questions or comments? Anything? And we'll go from there. K0JSC.
This is the FunLink system.
I don't know how many folks are logged in there, but want to know if I was set up to connect to try this out for anyone. And yeah, that's my goal. I think that we'll have to, for those that aren't familiar, and I'll muddle through it as well, we'll have to probably make it the subject of a net to talk about the config file and how to set it up, and probably trial and error. And I'll have to get this side running, and in fact, could probably use the node that I have, but we'll figure that out as we go. Sound like a plan, Jody? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah, I got it set up and installed, and I thought you and I had tried to set it up a terminal session over the internet rather than radio, since I had trouble getting this Kenwood to act as TNC properly.
I think the internet's the easiest way to do it, and you guys won't have to adjust your firewalls at all unless you wanted to take in incoming connections. You won't have to mess with the firewall or forward any ports. It'll just have to be me, and I'll put it on some server somewhere. And probably, now, depending on what it is and where it is, we can maybe leave it up. I'm kind of freaked out about forwarding any more ports into the network than I need to, so I'm sure that you and Ben and others get that.
Copy.
So you can, once we do this, we can use some sort of a terminal, telnet or terminal program to talk to these nodes. You can still use like Outpost BBS to send and receive messages and configure it to talk to the BBQ node locally on this, running on the same PC, and be able to send messages and do it. It's essentially the same thing as doing it over VHF, except we're just using the internet as a pipe instead of VHF radio, so hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to pause. We're at about a half an hour. There's not a lot of, I'm not hearing a lot of discussion, so I won't hold everybody here if there's not much more to talk about. If this sounds like something that you guys want to play with and get set up, let's give it a shot. This is another one. We'll work on the IP network presentation as well and figure out something we can do. It'll probably be more of a PowerPoint. Maybe want to have a couple of the guys speaking about how it was created and blah, 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 and how things all lash together, and some of that is possibly beyond the scope of a half hour or an hour net. Can get pretty involved, but yeah, let's give that a shot. So, final thoughts or comments before we call it a night here. K0JSC. everybody for checking in. Once again, if you didn't get a link for the chat message board thing that I stood up, send me an email. K0JSC@ARRL.net should get to me, and I'll send you the link to register. And it's just depending on if I'm sitting in front of the computer or not, it'll take me a little bit to authorize your account. You should be able to log in, and maybe we can use that in lieu of YouTube, actually, because I think we can do screen sharing and things on it as well. I haven't played with that, but I believe that we can. So might be something to try there. So 7-3, thanks for being here, and hopefully we can get some good discussion going around if we go through some of these things. K0JSC.